In this particular video, I'll be covering ISO, an acronym which has no direct meaning and is basically a measure of how sensitive any particular film stock is to light. This will be represented by a number on the film box or on the film itself. You may also see it labelled as ASA or as DIN, but these are older and largely outdated standards. You'll also find that ISO can be referred to as speed, and this is something that we will get onto later in the video. By understanding ISO, you'll be able to shoot in a wider range of scenarios, as well as have some artistic and creative control over how the final image will look. If you're coming from a digital background, then you should be somewhat familiar with ISO, in that you can vary it from shot to shot, and it will allow you to brighten or darken your photos. However, with film, this is a fixed variable. This is something you'll have to decide on before you even buy the roll of film, deciding which specific ISO will be suited for the environment you'll be shooting in. And then once you load that roll of film into your camera, that ISO is what you're stuck with until you finish that roll. So it is something that is fairly important to understand. In order to get a correctly exposed image, regardless of what film or camera you're using, you'll need to calculate the correct settings to be used, often by using a light meter. As ISO is a fixed variable when shooting any particular roll, you will need to tell the light meter, whether that's an external handheld light meter or one that's built into your camera, what ISO the film is in order to calculate the correct aperture and shutter speed combination for that photo. This will vary from camera to camera, with some automatically knowing and others requiring you to turn a dial or flick a switch so the camera knows what ISO you're using. ISO is measured by a number, and all rolls of film will have this number attributed to them when manufactured. These will go up in what's called stops, where each stop is either double or half the previous number, and is how most light measuring in photography is described. A low ISO film or slow speed, usually from sort of 25 up to 100 ISO, will be less sensitive to light and will therefore need to be exposed to brighter light in order to get a correct exposure. This sort of film will be best for sort of sunny days, or if you're using, say, a flash. Generally, these will also have a finer grain, which we'll touch on later. Medium ISO films or medium speed films generally will be around 200 to 400 ISO. These will serve as good all-rounders for most conditions and have a medium amount of grain. This will be what you see most commonly, as this will cover general photography. A higher ISO film or high-speed film, anywhere from sort of 800 ISO up to about 3200, will be better suited for poorer light conditions, such as overcast weather or indoors, as it requires less light to hit it in order to get a good exposure. Generally, when you're first getting started with film photography, the best practice is to set your light meter to match the number on the film, or box speed, which is literally the speed that is written on the box. So grain is a physical characteristic connected to the ISO. It is the physical size of the microscopic silver crystals which are formed when film is exposed to light, and that is what actually forms the image itself. With lower ISO films, the grain will be smaller and less noticeable, resulting in more detail being captured, so sort of think like a higher resolution, whereas higher ISO films will have a larger grain size and will be more noticeable in the shot, and especially when sort of enlarging it. Essentially what you're doing is you're sacrificing resolution in order to get a shot in poorer light conditions, which you wouldn't be able to do with a lower ISO film. This can be used to achieve sort of a specific creative look, as grain gives a certain texture to the photos, which can even be replicated in digital images to give its own sort of stylistic appeal. Once you get more comfortable with the idea of ISO, that's when you can sort of start to mess with it. Pushing or pulling film is a technique used to expose a roll of film at a different ISO from the one written on the box. Again, it is best to then shoot the entire roll at the same speed, and this does also require the film to be developed slightly differently. So if you're sending your film away to a lab, you will need to tell them that you're pushing or pulling the film, and they may charge you an additional fee just for the additional hassle of developing it at a different time. Pushing a film is when it is intentionally shot at a higher ISO than was written on the box. So think 400 ISO film being shot at 1600 ISO, or 2 stops of light, because you're going from 400, double it, 800, that's 1 stop, 800 to 1600, that's 2 stops from 400. More often you'll see this done with black and white films, and it will create an increase in contrast in the shots, as well as a more noticeable grain, just because you're moving up to a higher ISO. Pulling a roll of film would be the opposite. You're intentionally shooting a film at a lower ISO than the one written on the box. So a 400 ISO shot at 200 ISO would be pulled 1 stop. This will usually give you a less contrasty image, but will be better for capturing detail in shadows as well as maintaining detail in highlights. Essentially what you're doing with this process is you're over or underexposing the film by 1 or 2 stops, and then chemically compensating for that by over or under processing it to correct for that. This can also be done without altering the chemical process, but this will be slightly more limited. You'll often find this more common with colour negative films, as developing times are less easy to alter, and it will also help you sort of maintain detail in shadows or highlights depending on whether you over or underexpose. So say you wanted a more flexible image to work with in post and you didn't want to run the risk of losing detail in the shadows. If you had a roll of say Portra 400, you could set your camera's light meter to 200 ISO, which will be overexposing the image. That will then give you better shadow detail and a generally flatter contrast. It's basically the same as having a wider dynamic range. And this can all be done without actually altering the chemical process. So you can shoot, say, a single frame at a lower ISO and still then go back up to 400 when you need to. Knowing what film stock and ISO work best in certain scenarios is an incredibly powerful tool. I've made videos talking about this in the past, which you can find by clicking the card in the top right hand corner. Once you've got this figured out, it will actually give you more control over aperture and shutter speed, something which will more dramatically affect the style and look of your images. Again, I've got specific videos on both of these topics, which you'll find in the card, or by following the link in the description, or by clicking the playlist at the end of this video. If you found this video useful, then please do feel free to leave a like. If you think I've missed anything or you have any questions, then feel free to leave those in the comments and I'll get back to them as soon as possible. If you really like the content, then please feel free to subscribe or go check out some of my other videos on film photography. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.